And welcome to the Freelance episode 9. I thought it was episode 10, but it's episode 9 because the January one was not called the Freelance. So, yeah, bit of trivia there. I almost made the titled it wrong. Thankfully, I checked. We've got some people joining in the chat. Adrian saved us all of the difficulty of our discussion tonight in the chat. If you can hear me, do leave a comment, do say hello. And I'm just going to say hello, Nick.
Hello, Zach. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been like a huge error if you'd numbered this as number 10, because that makes sense. We're on October, but it's we'll say that the first one is episode 0, right? It didn't have a name.
Yeah, I mean, if as we're doing Star Wars theme, I think numerology could be whatever we want it to be.
Pretty much, yeah. Don't start at the with episode 1. Yeah, that's what we've learned here.
Pick a number.
Funny story. When I work as a software engineer for a curriculum writing company, and when we wrote our first curriculum, we started at middle school with grade 6. In America, and did 6, 7, and 8, and then filled in the top half, and then filled in below. So never didn't put it together with the Star Wars connection until just now, but
there we go. It's the George Lucas School of Numerology. So yep, if you are joining us, then do say hello in the chat. Let us know that you can hear us properly. I know that I can hear Nick. Hopefully you guys can hear us too. Today we are going to be talking about our favorite lightsaber fight, and we're going to be doing a tier list like the cool kids do.
Yeah, our first foray into doing that clickbait does. So
yeah, and Nick, being the tech savvy chap, has even set up an actual tier list for us. So
took all of a few minutes.
Yeah.
But
hello, YJ. We've got YJ in the comments saying hello, so I assume that means that you can hear us.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say, Nick?
I was going to say, did you? I mean, we've got quite a lot of lightsaber fights to talk about. Do you want to hit our regular seg main event?
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's go projects. We normally start with projects, don't we? What have you been up to, Nick?
Well, I haven't really done much reenactment or research related stuff. I had to travel for work last week, so that took a chunk of time out. But I did before I left. I nearly finished this little bust of a medieval guy. He's not quite fully attached yet. I had some issues with some glue, so I need to touch him up. But I'll post the final pics on Reddit and Twitter when he's finally finished. And also some crafting bits arrived. I got some like cleaned and bleached boar's teeth to make some creepy paraphernalia for Empire for next year. So cool. I haven't got any projects I'm working on, but I've been collecting some bits.
Yeah. How about you? It's kind of been the same for me, actually. So I'm hoping to go to Empire next year. So I've been picking up bits to do projects, which will hopefully appear on the channel. I've got some bottles, some of these metal insulated bottles that I'm going to face with leather to make some authentic looking water bottles. And I've also picked up, I know, I'm pretty sure that Nick is being kind and polite about this because it doesn't really seem like this is his thing. But
oh boy, that is shiny.
Look at that. That is an aluminium mail shirt. It is very light in all senses of the word. It's 3.5 kilos. So when you're wearing it, it doesn't feel like anything. but it is also extremely bright. So I'm going to be doing some tests to see different ways that I can blacken it using chemicals or paints and things like that. So that again will appear on the channel probably as a little project.
Nice.
It is, I think, I know Nick prefers steel mail and things, but I'm
I like Fiend. Are experimenting with some different types of plastic and polypropylene for some armor. Some of the other guys that I love with to reduce some of the load. So we'll see how that goes. Got some few more people joining us, which I think this is an opportune moment because there's a question about something from Ahsoka in the chat. So one, I have not seen the finale yet, and we are not talking about any content from Ahsoka tonight.
No, we're not. It is
we
live.
Will at some
it
point.
Is live, and that is why we're not talking about it, because Nick hasn't seen it yet, and also we don't want people to not watch because of spoilers and things like that. So yeah. Hello, the Lizard Viking. Welcome. We're just doing our project chat. Yeah, so we've not done anything. We've just bought stuff.
Yeah, prepared to do stuff. We prepared to do stuff.
By buying stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, by spending money.
Which is probably a good time to thank the Patreons, the channel.
Yeah.
Patreons. Thank you very much, Patreons. Thank you, all of you. In fact, everyone who watches, who likes, who shares, subscribes, and things like that. And if you want to support the channel a bit more, then you can head over to the link in the description and join the Patreon, because I certainly wouldn't be able to make these purchases and do these things if it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
Plus, also some of that money actually went towards some beers for Nick at Tewkesbury,
which I greatly appreciated.
He deserves it, and will continue to do so when we meet up again. Right, research. Nick, have you done any research?
I mean, does reading the Empire wiki count? I mean, kind of, right? Like that's research on a particular game world.
Yeah.
It's about as close as I came. I looked, and I had at the back half of a book about early humans and like those, and a new Dungeons and Dragons book to take with me to America, and I picked the D&D book to take on the plane. So that's about where I'm at.
I think we should definitely do a video at some point about mythologies and where they might line up with history.
Yep.
Because there is so much that could be said on that. And it's really interesting to both of us. I think a couple of Tewkesbury's ago, we spent a good hour or so just discussing that. So
and we went, we should have recorded this.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
So I've just started a new job, and so a lot of my free time has basically gone to reading policies and doing training and things like that. So yeah, and what little that I have had, I've read up a bit about Empire, because I'm designing my costume for next year's event. So yeah, that's it for me. Nothing historical.
We're not doing great. We'll have to try harder for next month.
Well, I could say, because I'm actually I'm now teaching a unit about the interwar years. So I have done a bit of research on the League of Nations and things like that because of work, but that kind of falls a bit outside what we normally talk about on this channel. So
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Anyway, so events. Have you done any events?
I have not done another event since we last spoke. I don't, because I was
No.
traveling to America when Avencroft happened, but I hear Avencroft went really well, so that was good. There were lots of some really cool pictures that came out of that. It's just nice doing things at a venue where you can have like a really like high quality historic backdrop to your pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And both Avencroft and Empire 4, a lot of the photos have been coming out for them on Facebook recently. So
yes.
those have been good. But neither of us went to Avencroft, and I think you talked about Empire
Yeah.
4 last month. So.
I think the next event I'll be doing will be in the early spring now. But then we've got reenactment markets and sort of LARP markets coming up.
That's true.
November time, which I guess kind of counts because you're traveling away.
Yeah. Yeah. So we might be able to talk about that coming up soon.
Well, we might have to make like a little haul video of all the stuff we ended up buying.
Yeah, that would be good. I just remembered actually one thing that I did do that a lot of my time, well, not a lot of my time, but some of my time was taken up with was I have written an article for a magazine. So, Living Medieval is an online magazine about medieval living history and things, and I've written an article for them. So, hopefully that will be appearing in one of their future episodes, and hopefully we'll get Jess and Mitch on at some point to talk about the magazine at a later date. So that was good. That was
We're hoping to have at some point over the next few months talk to them about Living Medieval. We want to talk Ahsoka, and we want to talk LARP with some of the kind of folks who've been playing Empire for a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. Great.
Cool.
Good. Okay, let's just see the chat. People are saying hello. Liz Viking Mithril. Yeah, that's what my shirt is made out of. My mail shirt. It's Mithril. So what I'm actually intending to do, I've got this aluminium blacking solution. So I'm going to test that on a small part of it and see what we can do with that. See what finish that gives. Because I like the darker finish. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And am I still building my son armor, and how is that going? So I am intending to, and hoping to do some more for him, but it is now going to be at least 12 months. Well, no, probably 11 months until it's needed, and he will grow a lot in the intervening time. So
you hope. I'm going to keep watering him. I hear that's how it works.
Yeah. So it will go on like a bit of a break until probably about 3 months before the event, and then we'll see what we can do. Yeah. Okay. Right. We've got a lot of lightsaber fights to talk about. So
we do. I was going through. Yeah, I was going through preparing for this, and I realized that I had to be pretty ruthless. So we're only hitting the live action movies, and we're only hitting fights that are like lightsaber user on lightsaber user. That does unfortunately mean that we skip out some really cool action scenes from some of the films, and it means that we also are not covering anything that was in any of the series, like the Disney Plus series or anything like that, or ends, which is very sad because there are some really cool duels in like the Clone Wars and the Rebels series. But I mean, we end up with 18 scenes to talk about tonight just from 9 movies, so that's a lot.
And I put together a playlist of it, not realizing that Nick had already found some. It's over an hour of lightsaber duels.
Yep.
And yeah, it's huge. And what I'll do is I'll put the link to that in the description when when the live show is finished. I'll put a link to that playlist in the description so you can go and watch them through yourself.
But
Okay,
well, before we start, I did want to hit my honorable mentions for things that got excluded, but I wish I could talk more about, which
go on.
is a scene from the Kenobi Vader versus the Finn versus the
Yep.
Stormtrooper in The Force Awakens. Rey and Kylo versus the guards in The Last Jedi, which, you know, was pretty good. There's the Knights of Ren scene from Rise of Skywalker, which I don't know about anybody else, but it filled my inner like 8-year-old with joy. Like just and then all of these scenes where in the prequel trilogy where you've just got Jedi beating up on droids, just endless waves of droids. It's just always cool. But yeah, we have these 18 scenes to talk about.
Can I just give my honourable mention, because I think
absolutely, please.
The greatest. Okay, all of these fights that we talk about, wherever they go, none of them are as good as the only lightsaber scene in Rogue One.
Okay, yeah.
Where Darth Vader turns up and just like
dude,
he's just the Darth Vader that you remember, right? He's
yeah. Again, in an 8-year-old is just like so happy.
Yeah. And it was really cool, I think, that they gave in Mandalorian, they gave Luke his own version of that.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. But I still think the Vader one was better.
Yeah. Yeah. I was yeah, I can get on board with that.
Anyway, let's go. We've got the tier list here. So our first scene, if I do the tier list, Nick, you can keep up to date with the chat and things that people are saying there.
I will do my absolute best. Yeah, the tier maker has helpfully jumbled these up into a somewhat random order here. So my list on my other screen is less than useful, but we'll do our best here.
And this will test my knowledge to see which ones I can match up. But I believe the first one, in fact, I know that the first one is Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul from Episode 1.
Yep.
So what do we think of this guy?
So one of the things I find really interesting about this scene is that if this is the first lightsaber duel you've ever seen because you're watching the movies in like numerical order, this is really bad.
Yeah.
Like this is a nothing fight. It's your first interaction with lightsaber duels and just nothing happens.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the context of like seeing the whole thing, if this is not your first lightsaber duel, like it does do a really good job of setting up Maul as like a bad guy that comes out of nowhere. Qui-Gon is clearly really worried. He's like sweating buckets trying to fight this guy off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think it's great. As I say, if it's your first interaction with lightsaber duels, it's not the best. So I wouldn't put it any higher than a B tier for me.
For me, I'd go as low as C tier, because I think a really good lightsaber duel, and I think to get to S tier, everything needs to be in line, right? Even the stuff that's not lightsaber focus needs to be in line. This one just it's kind of a bit weird. Like Maul just arrives out of nowhere, and Anakin runs off, and then the guys in the ship are just like, "Oh, Qui-Gon's in trouble.
Yeah, it's just
let's just have a look out the window," and they just gradually move closer, and it doesn't. Those sorts of things, you want them to add to the tension of the scene, not take away from it.
Yeah.
So I would go C at best.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it does have a nice force jump at the end of it, which kind of demonstrates like Qui-Gon's force abilities, which is cool. But yeah, there's no. Yeah, I think your point about the tension in the scene, like, and the end of the scene does have the very, very awkward kind of, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, shake hands with the small child.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Okay. So, nothing in it that makes us like recoil in horror, but
Yeah.
nothing great. Right, which one's next? I think actually episode 1 goes. The next one is
Well,
Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus
do you
Maul.
want to progress through and in the chronological order of the films, or do you want to just go across what it's got here and we'll deal with the random order and just pick them up?
Let's do chronological order.
Okay. So then, yeah, the next lightsaber duel is this one.
Okay. Right. Now I remember at the time. So well, at the time I was quite young, so I was like, oh wow, Star Wars. And then gradually the prequels started getting a bit more jip, but people tended to say episode 1's pretty bad, but the Duel of the Fates is great. I'm not sure on rewatching that it holds up as well as I might have hoped. But what's your opinion?
I think this is one of the best lightsaber duels.
Okay.
I think this holds up, and I think the things that you were saying about everything builds the tension of the scene. Yes, there are some goofy moments with like weird force leaps and like dangling above a pit, waiting to die or whatever. But the tension builds throughout the scene. The characterization and the way each of the three participants, like their physical choreography, demonstrates the character that they are and how they're building towards it. The score is outstanding. Like it's just such a phenomenal piece of music. And an criticism I will often see of this scene is it feels overly choreographed. And I agree to an extent, but to me that actually adds to the context of the scene, because these are supposed to be Jedi and Sith at like the peak of their training and like the institutions that they exist in. So they are going to be choreographed, because you know you end up getting caught whenever you're like doing any kind of combat. You get caught up in patterns and sequences. This is why martial arts train specific sequence of moves, because you just flow through them. And so I think that choreography really speaks to their mastery of the art that they're performing in the duel. So I mean, for me, this is like an S tier lightsaber duel. This is one of the best. But I can understand like comparing it to like some modern fight choreography, it feels a lot more staged.
Yeah. There's yeah, it's just kind of, it just feels like some of the swings are definitely, and I don't feel like this is necessarily the choreographer or the actor's problem, right? Because whenever you're doing stunt fighting, the whole point is making it look like you're trying to kill the other person while actually doing nothing that's going to hurt them, right?
Yeah.
So it's not their fault. But I feel like some of the camera angles and things like that don't hide that enough. And so you have lightsabers swinging, where they were never going to hit the other person. And yes, that is how you should choreograph a stunt fight. But I think other directors were able to hide that a lot better than in this one. And I think George Lucas in other films hid it a lot better than in this one. So what? So you're saying S. I'm saying I think it's pretty good, but I don't think it's the greatest one. I don't think it's the best one here. So can we put it A?
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think.
Or I'm happy if
this
you
is
feel
the top of A
it needs to go A.
Like this has got to be the top of A because there can't be much better than this for me.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. Can we? Okay. Oh no! Oh no! I've messed it up. That
I believe in you.
Hey. All right. Top of A. Got it. Okay. What is next, Nick? Have we had any? Adrian says that Vader in Rogue One is his favorite.
Yeah.
He's a man of good taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next.
So we have Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Dooku. But I've got to try and remember which of these, because it's the first.
This one. It's that one.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I felt that this one, again, there were issues through it all being done on green screen. Not again, sorry. I think the main issue for this one was that it was a lot of it was done on green screen, so it doesn't hold up as well as it could have. If they'd have just had like a physical set. And I think that one of the biggest criticisms of that film is that the overuse of green screen impacted badly on the otherwise very good actors' performances.
I think all three actors in this like were great. Like Christopher Lee is fantastic, and it was very, very clear that he was enjoying being Count Dooku. And just the way that he draws his lightsaber at the start of this fight is just so perfect. But yeah, and there's a moment in this scene when he takes Anakin's arm off, and you can see that he's actually scared because he's just done something that he wasn't supposed to do. He's like actually hurt Anakin.
Yeah.
Because he was forced to. But the choreography isn't as good as I think it could have been. I think, yeah, the use of the green screen means that this doesn't look great. And also, there's an awful lot of fluff in this scene that doesn't really progress anything that's going on. So, yeah. And I see we've got a comment from Liz Viking about the Duel of the Fates scene about Obi-Wan being too graceful after Qui-Gon dies. And I do think that's interesting. And I don't want to nerd out too much at this point, but there's another fight later with Obi-Wan in it where I want to talk about like lightsaber styles and like the decisions they made in choreography, and it's relevant to that point. So I will circle back to that.
I think there's a great moment. One of the best moments of Duel of the Fates, I felt, was in the where they're separated by the force fields. Although that's like massively convoluted and contrived, and it feels very much like the Masha sequence from Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, why did they put these here?
Yes. Yep.
But the characterization of what the three characters did in that moment, I felt was just a very clear thing of like, oh yeah, okay, we're getting like clear characterization, really good. And I did feel like there was a lot of characterization in the characters here, in the writing here. And yeah, I feel like it was kind of just let down a little bit by some of the choreography. Going for, I think you can get characterization across in the choreography as well as the actions. I don't know if that makes sense. Basically, the mood, and we'll get to this when we look at some of the sequel fights as well. But the character should show off their character in the choreography, and I don't know that necessarily came across massively.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think this lightsaber fight is fine. Like, I actually think this is probably like on the nose. This one from and because
I feel like we've go on. Sorry.
As I say, it doesn't do anything particularly bad, but it's not hugely like outstanding and memorable.
Yeah. I think part of that is to do with the next one that comes along, which is incredibly memorable. but it just also feels like it could be improved with, like, if they redid this now, almost exactly the same, it would be 10 times better. So yeah, B tier. But,
Yeah. Yeah. So the next one is Yoda and Dooku.
I think that's this one.
Yes, it
It's
is.
the
Yes, yeah, it is.
the height of the green lightsaber wielding uh, guy there gives me a clue because he's only in the corner. But um, yeah, I remember walking out of the cinema and this was the only thing that anyone talked about.
Yep, I think that's true. And I rewatched all of the films maybe 2 years ago, and I saw this scene and I hated everything about it.
Yeah,
I really do. And I don't know why that is, because I try and listen to, as I say, my inner 8-year-old when I'm thinking about these things a lot of the time. But just there was so much potential here, and the kind of grab at the green screen and the kind of effects and animation just kind of meant that, like, can you imagine being Christopher Lee being asked to film this?
yeah,
Like you're acting against nothing.
yeah,
They're going to fill in like where your sword is going, like I know. I think this is the only my I don't immediate, like, I didn't do this, but I almost wanted to create a bouncing Yoda tier at the bottom here,
yeah,
purely this in the dumpster, because I dislike this scene so much. But it is
yeah,
saved by Yoda catching Force lightning,
yeah,
and the moment when he draws his lightsaber was really cool.
yeah. I
I,
think, yeah, I think they missed out so much that they could have done. I don't like playing what if games because I like to just experience what the director has done and not complain that they didn't do what was in my head,
yeah.
right? Because this is their story. That's you know. But I feel like Yoda could have had a lightsaber fight in a way that was entirely Yoda,
Hmm.
and I don't mean like just jumping around like all of the other Jedi jump around and do that sort of thing. Like, what if he just literally meditated and used the Force to move the lightsaber?
Yeah.
That could have
Or
been a really cool way of making him different and showing that his physical, he doesn't just like suddenly decide that he doesn't need a stick anymore. He doesn't need to use his physicality. He could do it in another way.
I do think if somebody had come up with the idea that they are loving to use at the moment, where the force catch on blaster bolts and lightsabers, where they hold the blade away from their hand with the force, like that
Yeah,
would have been like peak Yoda lightsaber fighting. Just
yeah,
like doing that and moving the opponent with the force. Yeah, yeah. Like there was things that could have been done here, I
mm.
feel.
What I really wanted, this is after I got over like the, oh, what, Yoda with a lightsaber, um, and then thinking about what you could have done. I thought it could have been cool to have him with like little lightsaber shuriken that he controls around himself, like little satellites to like block incoming blaster bolts and lightsabers. I thought that could have been
I,
really cool.
I love the creativity. Let's get wacky. Lizard Viking is
Yeah,
off. I hope you enjoy the rest of the stream when you watch it later. Um,
yeah.
so where are we putting this?
Let's put it D.
Yeah,
I, it's a missed opportunity,
yeah.
right? Because you could have at that point as well. You could have shown Mace Windu is the lightsaber master and Yoda is like the Force master, but now Yoda's just good at everything. Yeah. Okay. Next, we have at the beginning of episode 3. It's Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Dooku.
Yep. All right. So this is.
We'll take them together this time.
Yep. I really like this. I think it's definitely better than the first outing of like this kind of combination. It really sort of home the, and I'm gonna still, I can't remember which video I saw that said this first, but this is shamelessly stolen, but it really hammered home the Obi-Wan Kenobi, the B grade student who's trying really hard, being forced to tutor the A star student who doesn't need to try.
Yeah.
Like the gulf in their skill that's kind of starting to be demonstrated in the lead up to this scene and then this fight scene, I thought was really cool. Again, Christopher Lee gets to be a badass, and like the little CG flip that they make him do at the beginning, just like
really cool. It's like, just perfect casting as well, because like he's a Sith Lord who still goes by the title Count, and like you just need someone who's just over the top, and Christopher Lee, don't you?
Yeah, and like the twice the pride, double the fall, and like his like enjoyment of like chewing this scenery.
Yeah. I feel it was a really strong showing. I think my only thought, which I thought yesterday as I was watching it again, is that he kills him far too easily at the end. Anakin kills Dooku.
Do it.
At the end, he goes, I shouldn't. And he goes, do it. And then he just does.
But the sound design then, like that screech of the lightsabers against each other as he does it. Beautiful.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I mean, I'm thinking like low A tier for this. Like
low A?
Yeah, like this is definitely like, I mean, for me, it's definitely not better than Duel of the Fates. It's significantly better than the first outing, so I think it has to go in the next tier up. But
yeah, I think it's just one of those ones that you don't really complain about any of it, but it's no one's favorite, right? Yeah. Okay. The next one is, I think, Grievous versus Obi-Wan.
Yep.
I realized last night how many lightsaber fights are in the prequel.
I know.
So many compared to all of the other films.
Yep.
There's so many.
And that's
go on.
Sorry, I just read Adrian's comment, which I love here. And if we're talking about what if in Star Wars, Darth Maul is responsible for everything that happens here, because if he doesn't kill Qui-Gon, we don't get like we don't get Darth Vader, we don't get like that, all of the stuff happening in the Clone Wars, because Qui-Gon is still alive.
Anakin has a strong father figure instead of like an older brother.
And I was just counting up and realizing that there are 9 lightsaber duels that we're talking about in the prequel trilogy, and then 9 including a few that we're gonna blast through in the other 6 films.
Yeah.
I want to know what you
do. You know what I found really? Go on. I found really funny in this, and I think it's been said by other people before, but the way that the dialogue doesn't match the choreography is that General Grievous goes, "You fool! I have been trained in the Jedi arts by Count Dooku," and then his arms split into four, and he starts spinning the lightsabers around. It's like, I don't think Dooku ever did that.
No,
I just feel like that is not a move that Dooku taught
no,
him. I think he worked that one out
yeah.
himself.
So I want to hear what you think about this.
Okay. It's either a demonstration of how much better Obi-Wan is than any other Jedi, or it's a demonstration that the characterization uh, of Grievous is not standard across all of the stuff. I guess that's probably not something that you can have a go at this. I feel like, yeah, he cuts his hands off far too easily. He's doing it all the time, and yeah,
So it's one of those things. Is like movies should stand on their own. You shouldn't need to watch
yeah,
other content for movies to make sense or to like have emotional weight, all these sorts of things. They should be able to do on their own. But I feel like this scene is one of the biggest examples of how much better the General Grievous character is if you have seen additional media around the Clone Wars and
yeah,
that kind of thing. Because when he like reveals all of those lightsabers early on, and when he like draws four of them and is going to use them, and like you have this understanding, and like you've spent time with all of those characters that he's killed to claim those lightsabers. There's like an emotional weight and an emotional payoff to Obi-Wan kicking his ass. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of an inverse ninja effect where he was like really badass in one set of media and then he just jobs to Obi-Wan here pretty swiftly.
yeah. I feel like maybe you could have dealt with that in the choreography if Obi-Wan was losing against him with a lightsaber, but then uses Force and
Yeah,
lightsaber together. I think that would have been really would have told a story, right?
yeah,
Whereas as it is, it's some cool flashy moves and some cool disarms, but
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
it's
and the other part of episode 3, which I think is seeing additional media, is the Order 66 scene, which is like pretty emotionally
yeah,
heavy in the film, like for Star Wars anyway.
yeah,
But if once you've seen like the incident, the media around it, like you've watched the Clone Wars series, or you've seen like it's completely gone, like Rebels, to like know what happened to the clone troopers afterwards and this kind of thing, like it becomes much more like emotionally weighty, I think. But a movie should stand on its own. So yeah.
yeah. So yes, it looks like I might have one of my previous students in the chat.
Ah,
Uh, so hello, Zach, but I won't be talking about work tonight. It is purely Star Wars tonight. Um, so where are we going to put General Grievous? What do we think?
I mean, it's better than the Qui-Gon and Darth Maul fight, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's like B tier because it had so many missed opportunities.
Yeah, I think we can put it C tier
Shove it up so it's slightly
comfortably.
higher up than yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. Makes me happier.
Yeah, okay. All right, good. Okay, I'm kind of a bit shaky on the order here now. I think,
We've got 3 more prequel trilogy fights.
yeah, I think it is Sidious versus Mace Windu.
Yep.
So,
Yep. I had this down as Jedi Council versus Palpatine because there
yeah,
are
yeah.
those 3 other Jedi Knights to give, but
Mm. Um, yeah, What do you
I like that.
what do you think?
I can start out with the thing that I like about this scene. I like that this
Yeah.
scene leaves the question whether or not Darth Sidious let Mace Windu win, because
Mhm.
to funnel Anakin's turn.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think the choreography was fine. Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it, for me, it sits in this like middle ground of, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I don't think it I don't think it tells you very much about the characters beyond this guy very good, this guy also very good.
I do think
Yeah.
that the closing moments do a lot about Windu, because he's basically echoes the same line that Palpatine does at the start of the film to Anakin about whether or not you should kill somebody. Which again contributes to Anakin's fall, which I think is interesting. And I like that demonstrates like how close Windu like skirts the line of the dark side, and that comes across in his like fighting style. It's very aggressive and very physical. But yeah, I do feel like this was a setup for the scene that comes afterwards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's another one of those could be B, could be C. Like I would have liked the other Jedi Masters to do a bit more before they died.
Yeah.
Maybe have one of them go down to a surprise attack, but three of them. Yeah. And yeah, just again, like there's nothing really egregious about it, but it's no one's favorite.
I think it's better than the other one we have in B tier here. I think it tells a better story.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Shall we swap those around then? There we go. Cool. Good. So I think the next two are kind of like intercut. So what order do you have?
I have Yoda versus Palpatine first, and then Obi-Wan versus Anakin, which you could make an argument should have been Obi-Wan versus should be listed as Obi-Wan versus Vader, but
yeah. Okay. Well, let's do Yoda versus Palpatine.
Sure.
Again, I could what if about what this could have been.
This is a much better Yoda lightsaber fight.
It is, yeah.
And the casual dismissal of the guards as he goes in.
That's just funny. Yeah.
It's like, no, you're not even worth me looking at.
Yeah. And there's that one of the Chancellor's aides is standing next to the Chancellor as he comes in. He's like,
I'm out.
Should I go now? Yeah. So there's some good comedy from that.
And this scene does a really good job of showing off how absolutely unhinged Sidious is. Like,
yeah, because he's been playing a game up till now, but now he's just full on Sidious.
Yeah, he's cackling and he's loving, like he's just like drawing on all of these emotions to like fuel his dark side power, and I think that's really cool. And you've got Yoda who's like constantly like recentering himself and doubling down on like this is what must be done, you know. I felt the end of this was kind of abrupt.
Yeah, I don't quite get why Yoda went.
Yeah, because he was doing all right. Like he was like catching Force lightning and throwing it back, and all this
Yeah.
wacky stuff, you know. Um,
I think maybe so. One of the issues with Yoda in the prequels, I think, is that they didn't explain how he, like, why he was able to go from walking with a walking stick most of the time to suddenly springing about and jumping and things.
hmm,
And if there could have just been a bit more of like how much concentration it takes him, like if he's using the Force to do all of that, you like
like,
maybe if at the end of the previous fight with Dooku, if he'd collapsed
yeah,
or something to show that actually it's not like he's faking the walk with a stick. Like he does genuinely need a stick, but for a short periods of time, he can use the Force to help himself do all of that. And then that would explain here why he has to leave.
yes, yes, yeah, and I think in the chat, um, the talking about like this is a much more realistic demonstration of Yoda as a duelist than the episode 2 example. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. So I think this has got to be B tier again.
I think this tops out B tier for me at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think it.
feel like this has got some really nice moments in it, and it could almost be someone's favorite if it wasn't that there were some stronger ones.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and like certainly, as I say, the like the other half of this fight, because we talked a lot about Yoda. The other half of this fight, like the Darth Sidious half of the fight with him, as the laughing, like just the exulting in his evilness and like the culmination of this plan that he's been working on for so long. Just like I think does add to this scene and could easily be a reason why this is somebody's favorite.
Yeah. Um, nobody says what's the reason why Yoda can walk. I think you're probably asking why does he struggle walking? I think it's just age.
Yeah, I mean he's old.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Um,
All right.
okay, the big one. This is what everyone was talking about 20 years ago, whenever it came out. I can't remember. Um, Everyone was talking about this scene. Um, I'll be interested in your thoughts because, yeah, we might differ on this one.
Possibly. Okay, so I'm gonna fully nerd out for a second here. So there is like a whole load of writing, both to do with like the choreography of the fight scenes and like in-universe stories about like the different forms of lightsaber combat and which ones people like prefer and master. And I think that this scene does a really great job of demonstrating the difference between the form that Obi-Wan mastered and the form that Anakin mastered. Because the form that Obi-Wan mastered is a very kind of defensive, reserved, like keeping yourself safe, flowing into attacks when you've got the opportunity. And the form that Anakin masters is more to do with attacking, using your physicality, those kinds of things. And I think this whole scene plays out as a demonstration of those two contrasting styles. And I also think this scene does a really good job of, again, demonstrating that gap of ability between the two of them, but also the gap that Obi-Wan has all of this extra experience.
Yeah.
And because Obi-Wan is like entirely on the defensive for almost the entire fight. He barely ever gets like shots in, like compared to how much Anakin is attacking. But he
Yeah.
doesn't lose. And the times that he does get in and like get a bit of a foothold and gain a bit of an advantage over Anakin is when he uses more than just his dueling. He uses his environment, he uses his body, he uses, you know, his force power or something like that. And the again, this scene plays on that idea that these are Jedi at like the peak of their power, so they're very, very precisely moving around each other. And there's a moment where they almost dance their swords around each other as they're basically doing the mirror image
Mm-hmm.
of what the other person is doing. And as a kind of out of universe thing, there is a move that Hayden Christensen essentially made up on set, which became like Anakin's signature move, which involves like a spin behind the back with the lightsaber blade. And Ewan McGregor could never get it right, but they have to both do it at the same time in this scene. And you can see that Hayden Christensen is way better at it than Ewan McGregor. And it just comes through and adds to this like difference in the two characters here. I really like this scene. I think this is really good.
All right. So I thought that we would have different opinions. We do. I feel like this scene is far too long. I feel like the choreography is incredibly involved, and possibly too involved, and the lighting and the fact that they both have the same color lightsabers makes it hard to read at times. So those would be my problems with it. I see all of your points. Like, I haven't read that. I think that I can see what you're saying on all of those, and I think that is a story. That's a good story that they're telling. I do like how basically throughout it, through the Clone Wars and everything, you've got Anakin is like the naturally gifted guy, and Obi-Wan is the guy that puts in the time.
Yep.
And that kind of just adds to like the friendship, but also adds to the animosity, the undercurrent of the animosity of like one of them just always finds everything so easy, but then doesn't try.
Yep.
And could be so much better than Obi-Wan if he actually bothered half as much as Obi-Wan cared.
Yeah.
The biggest problem for me is the lightsaber colors, and I don't know how I would get around it, because at the end of the scene, Obi-Wan needs to pick up Anakin's lightsaber, and it needs to have a blue blade. So I don't know how I would get around it.
Around it is that you have you don't have Obi-Wan get his lightsaber back after the Grievous fight.
Yeah.
Right. He drops it during the Grievous fight, and one of the Commander Cody returns it to him. Right. You just don't have that, and Yoda gives him a different colored lightsaber to take away with him. But then he doesn't have it. Why does he? And then you have to tell, like, you kind of fit in there that he's going to rebuild his lightsaber between episode 3 and episode 4 so that he can have the blue one at the.
Yeah. Unless Anakin got a red one, but still has the blue one on him for some reason, and Obi-Wan maybe gets.
He hasn't broken the Kyber
crystal. I don't know. Maybe it's just like my visual brain. I find visual stuff like that really confusing unless there's a clarity, and the fact that it's taking place on Mustafar, so the lighting is poor. They did dress them in all black and all white, which was helpful.
Yes.
But when they're moving that fast, it is just, you've got that visual thing, and it does help to have that. And in Star Wars, they're very, very good at that.
Yes.
Even like the blaster bolts are different colors depending on things like that, and the silhouette and colors are always so clear, and it just didn't feel as clear in this when I watched it. But I see all of your arguments, and that is a very Zac. That's a very that is probably, I am one of the very few number of people that actually care about that sort of thing. So I'm going to let you place this where you want to place it.
I mean,
I'm not
this
going to
this
get
is
hung up.
well. So here's the interesting thing: is I think this is about the same as Duel of the Fates. This is like another S tier fight for me. I think this is
Yeah,
really good. I also want to call out in the chats, people talking about the script being bad. The dialogue to start this off is atrocious. It
yeah,
is really poor. It's just like randomly out of nowhere, like Anakin suddenly thinks that Obi-Wan is like trying to steal his wife, and like, what is he? What?
yeah. I think, yeah. And we can't play what if, but that could have started at the beginning of the film,
Yeah,
couldn't it? Um, and I think that a lot of the issues with the prequels just basically come down to George Lucas not having an effective editing team.
yeah. I mean, there's a reason why Empire is considered the best Star Wars film by a lot of people. It's
Yeah,
the one where like he had a really kind of strong editing team, like telling him no, basically.
yeah,
And talking
exactly.
of the original
Or
trilogy,
just giving suggestions, like
yeah,
this is how you could tweak it. Like that's all. We're not saying that his ideas are bad. I think in many ways, actually, George Lucas has too many good ideas, and he just needs to cut out some for
yeah,
simplicity's sake. Um, yeah. So I'm going to put this in S tier for you. Um, in my little what if universe, one of them has got a different color
one of them's
lightsaber,
got a green lightsaber.
and then I'll be a bit happier with it. Um, yeah.
All right,
So
OT time.
yeah, the original trilogy. Um, so two thoughts. When I watched this again yesterday, I thought, wow, the quality on this is much worse than I remember. And
Yes,
then also, straight coming out because I'd watched all of the prequel ones straight into this, and then I thought, actually, there's a lot of realism in this. It felt like a lot more like a real duel than a lot of the prequels fights, even though they're a lot more flashier. This
yes.
felt like two experienced fighters testing each other and not wanting to commit too much.
Mm-hmm. And there is a theory that you should watch um the prequel trilogy after the end of Empire,
Yeah,
before Return of the Jedi. And I think that kind of does tie in with what you're talking about, is like you see these people as experienced people, and then you go back and find out how they got there, and then you see the end of their story.
yeah, yeah.
um
It's called the Machete Order.
yep.
Yeah,
And in the chat we've got a agreement that the and I think that this scene produces some excellent visuals,
yeah,
particularly framed in that doorway
yeah,
with Luke looking on. And yeah, and I want to agree here that the duels are not great duels, but they are good film content.
yeah. Good storytelling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
and I
I think.
think, go on.
Go for it. No, I was going to give a
Are
rating. So you.
okay, I think that this one actually works better having watched the Obi-Wan series, where Obi-Wan just wrecks Darth Vader, because you can see the in Darth Vader's movements in this one, he is he's saying all of this big stuff like I am the master now, and all of that sort of thing. But actually his movements, and I think this is actually just down to the filming practicalities of it, he was too strong and the props kept on breaking. So there was a lot of stuff that they wanted to do that they couldn't do. Um, but it kind of feels like there's a bit of bluster there from Vader, and he knows that he needs to kill Obi-Wan, but he's not sure like is he up to it, and he's testing him.
And one of the things, I feel like it was a missed opportunity to not play a little bit on the I'm not sure if I can kill Obi-Wan. There's a scene in The Force Awakens, everyone knows the scene where Kylo says, like, I know what I need to do, but I'm not sure if I can, or I'm not sure if I.
Yeah.
And there's a role that I think there was a complete missed opportunity where they could have done a lot more with that.
Yeah.
I think this is probably, like, just because of the story that's being told here and like the framing of the scene, and this is like a high B tier fight.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot happens.
Yeah, I put it as B tier.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like technical genius here, but like there's just a weight to this.
It's iconic, but it's no one's favorite.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm thinking like A tier and S tier needs to. There's someone in the world who says my favorite lightsaber duel is X, and I don't think anyone is saying that about this duel.
Yeah.
Okay, next one was Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader.
In the cave.
I'm going to put it in the D cave down there because
this was, I should have made a tier for like random story lightsaber fight doesn't need us to talk about it, because like
I didn't even put this in my playlist because it's just it's nothing.
But let's talk about the real Luke and Vader fight from Empire.
Yes.
Right. I'm going to nerd out about you go give your
every time I watch this, I'm surprised at how good it is. Everything about it, from the filmmaking to the choreography to the dialogue, is just so good. It's just really well thought out. Stuff like Luke going, "You'll find me full of surprises," and then Vader immediately disarms him.
Yeah.
And it's like that cocky Luke Skywalker, like, "Oh yeah, we used to bag Womp Rats on Tatooine," and like he's that, but then Vader is just like, "Be quiet.
Yeah.
Get in the freezer.
Sit down."
Yeah, and Luke has gone and he thinks like, I can do this. I've taken out a Death Star, and it turns out that he's nothing. And the only reason that he doesn't die instantly in this scene is because Vader doesn't want to kill him.
No, he wants to capture.
And you find that out slowly through the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just great storytelling. It's really brilliantly shot. It's very clear to read. They've both got iconic silhouettes.
Mm-hmm.
And the lightsaber colors are different. And you know, the moment, and the sets are beautiful, and you can tell they're having an effect on the actors, like it kind of makes you feel like if only Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen had those kind of sets to react to when they were filming the prequel trilogy, like what a performance we could have got from them.
Yeah. I one of the things that I love about this scene, which is it's nothing to do with the lightsabers or the action or anything that's going on here. This is a dark scene, and it is not dark on film. Right? This scene is like low light, particularly in like the freezing chamber, the carbonite chamber. Yet the scene is not lit darkly. You can see everything that's going on, and I hate that in modern films where everything's so dark that I cannot see any of the detail that's going on. That aside, this is the start of a progression this fight and then the fight in episode 6, where I think it's really interesting because this is Obi-Wan Kenobi's 2 apprentices, and they both fight with the same fighting style, which is the antithesis of his defensive fighting style. And then end up fighting each other with this quite aggressive fighting style. And I just think that's a really interesting thing. And it also informs some things I want to say about Kylo later on, which I think develop his character. I think this is a really, really strong duel. I think it does everything it needed to. I don't think they missed anything in this. I could easily see this being somebody's favorite scene. I mean, the people in the chat saying that it's their favorite scene. So
yeah, that's great. I think this has got to be S tier for me.
Okay.
I can't think of any notes that I could give it. Like, there are some other duels have got some more physicality to them, but even that, the lack of the jumping around and fancy footwork tells the story that Luke is inexperienced and Vader just doesn't even need to try.
And Vader's like throwing stuff at him all the time with the Force, and like Luke's just like frantically just trying to keep himself alive. Yeah, no, I can see this being an S tier. Like, this is a really, really good one. Good scene.
There we go. Okay. Somebody says, why is it called the Machete Order? I think it was just a guy who's the first guy who posted it. His screen name was Machete.
Yeah.
He also said you don't need to watch episode 1.
Yes, which apart from Qui-Gon is such an interesting character, and the only time we got to spend with him was episode 1, so like that makes episode 1 like valuable. But
and there are problems with episode 1. A lot of them could have been solved with little tweaks.
I think a lot of the problems of episode 1 are like iconic issues called trilogy in general.
I think
they're too sterile. The dialogue is not very strong. Like, all of these things like are kind of encapsulated in something that happens in episode 1.
But when I first watched it, when I was in the target audience age, I loved it. Like, and it's important to understand that these specific 9 films, the 35-year-old man that I currently am, is not I'm not the target audience. And I can still enjoy them, but I'm not the target audience. So.
And earlier on in the chat, somebody said like something was fun, and that's really important. And like, all of these films are fun. And I know a lot of people have a problem with the prequel trilogy, and there are many flaws, starting with the fact that they didn't actually have a trilogy in mind. They just made a bunch of films. But they're still fun.
Yeah.
They still brought me joy when I watched them.
Yeah. And they have great moments, and many of those moments include lightsabers.
Yeah.
So, speaking of lightsabers, so one of the only 3 actual lightsaber duels in the original trilogy is the one on the second Death Star between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. I think Luke Skywalker would have killed him if the Emperor hadn't just kept his mouth shut. I think Luke, he keeps on jarring Luke out of his rage with that like massively evil voice, doesn't he?
I mean, if you're going to play what if, like, there is a real solid chance that happens, and I think part of that is yes. So this is the peak of both of them using an incredibly aggressive form of lightsaber combat on each other. They are both really going for it.
Yeah.
And that builds up to the point where, you know, Luke is now maybe not better than Vader, but he wants it more.
Yeah. And
And
Vader, this one goes backwards and forwards between Luke not wanting to kill Vader and then
yeah,
absolutely wanting to kill
yeah,
Vader.
yeah,
And when he absolutely wants to kill Vader, he's winning because Vader doesn't want to kill him.
yeah. Vader never actually wants to kill him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I do think you're partially right about like knocking him out of the rage, but also the moment where he realizes that he and his father are both missing a hand
Hmm.
is also like, I think there's like a real character moment in there, because up until that point all we had was Obi-Wan Kenobi saying he's more machine now than man, but you
Yeah.
never saw any of that. You just saw like the blinking lights and the heavy breathing, and then you realize that he has basically the same injury, and it's like that visual signifier that Luke is starting down the same path of his father. And I think that the story that is being told here is really interesting. Also,
Yeah.
first time we see Force lightning, like
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Which was cool. It was cool. Um, I feel like this is a really key part to Luke's character, and this is why I actually had fewer problems with the sequel trilogy than some of my friends did. Is that Luke's character is that he is deeply flawed
yes,
in that he always acts on impulse and
yeah,
on his emotions, but his redeeming light is that he will always self-evaluate um, those feelings and will back down from them immediately if he feels like they were wrong.
yep, yeah,
And I think that's where the Emperor misjudged him, is that he felt he was encouraging him into those actions. But as soon as Luke thought was able to think about the actions, he then like there was no like, oh, this is what I've started, I'm going to finish it, or like I've gone so far down this path, that's where I am, which I feel like, and that was what kind of part of what did for Anakin.
yeah. He lacks that self-evaluation because, as you say, he had a big brother, not a father figure, whereas Luke,
And he doesn't, he, and Anakin never felt like he could back down from something once he had started,
yeah,
whereas Luke always is able to self-evaluate and go, no, actually, what I'm doing is not the right course of action, and I'm going to stop doing it now. And it doesn't matter what the consequences of that are.
and
It's wrong, and
that's
I'm going to stop it.
possibly because Obi-Wan had made that mistake of Anakin and didn't make that mistake with Luke.
Maybe, yeah,
Um,
um, yeah,
Also, Yoda had a direct hand in training Luke, which he never really did with Anakin.
yeah,
Like, there is a lot of kind of story around the story to say that, like, Luke wasn't just like the savior. He was Obi-Wan and Yoda and other. He was their second chance,
yeah,
like, to do it
yeah,
right this time.
yeah. I don't, but I feel that Luke's success didn't actually come from Obi-Wan and Yoda. We're getting deep now. This isn't about lightsaber fights anymore.
I know.
Uh, Luke's success didn't come from them, I don't think. I think um because they were preparing him to kill Vader,
Yeah,
and his eventual success basically came from doing what Anakin never could do, which was to actually say no to
Yeah.
people and say, I'm going to go with my conscience above anything else. Whenever Anakin has a difficult situation, someone is telling him what to do, and he never stands up for what he thinks is right. He always goes with, in the end, the Emperor.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of what you're saying is being echoed in the chat, which I think is really interesting. And I want to come to this point about Luke's virtue coming from his aunt and uncle. I think that was a very deliberate choice by Lucas to ground Luke in a kind of hardworking farm environment, but hardworking because that's what you do, not because you're forced to, as compared to the upbringing that Anakin had. So
Yeah.
So
And
we
he
stick
never had the weight of being the chosen one, right?
also that, yeah.
Anakin was told he's the chosen one from like age 8.
Yeah.
And like, being trained up because he's going to bring balance to the Force. And Luke was just like,
I'm shooting the plane.
Yeah. Like, I want to go to Toshi Station.
Yeah.
Where are we going to put this? I don't think personally, I don't think it's quite as good as the Cloud City one from a cinematography point of view.
I think it's the middle of A tier. It's like not as good as Duel of the Fates, but it's better than the start of episode 3.
Right, I'm very happy with that. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Prequel
trilogy time. Oh,
right. It's 9:23. We're still going.
Well, there's 2 scenes in here that we can dump right away, right? We can dump Dark Ray and the Dyad. They can go straight into D tier. The Dyad is interesting because that was a cool exploration of the Force, but wasn't particularly useful.
So that's those 2, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. They're just eminently forgettable. Like when Nick put together the list, I was like, I don't even remember these. There's no point in us discussing them because they're so forgettable. I felt. Okay, so the first one is the one on Starkiller Base.
Yes. I love how it's cut out the important part of one of these images.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. It's the auto.
The auto crop on the penultimate fight we have here.
Don't worry, guys. The AI isn't clever enough yet.
No.
I loved this scene, and I think part of that is probably a reaction against the reactions that a lot of my friends had, where they were like, "Oh, that was terrible! Like, how is this? What about this?" I felt like the storytelling was really good in this, in that you had Kylo Ren is 100% in control of this fight, both against Rey and against Finn. He could win the fight at any point up until the end. But first of all, he doesn't think that Finn is a threat. So he's playing with him basically. And then, so let me just say, this fight's got a very clear storyline being told in the choreography. And I like that because the storyline is 100% also based in the characterization of the characters. So Kylo Ren starts off, he's playing with Finn. He doesn't think Finn is ever going to be able to beat him, and so he's taking his time. And the moment Finn gets in a lucky shot on Kylo Ren, Kylo just finishes it for him.
Yeah.
And just takes him out of the fight.
Yeah.
And that that's as a swordsman. Sometimes you'll be fighting someone and you think, I am so much better than you. Like, this is not a problem, but they can still get in lucky hits. And that is exactly what a swordsman would do. If you realize someone has just got a lucky hit on you, if you feel like you're better than them, you put them down as quickly as possible. Um, and he does that. And then um, Rey does the force pull, gets the lightsaber. They have a fight, and Kylo Ren is again beating her massively. And but he's not trying to kill her because he wants her to become his apprentice. And then she does the whole like tapping into the force thing and beats him. And that was the part that I didn't like.
So I didn't have so much of a problem with the tail end of this fight, partially because like Kylo's been shot like really badly, and
Yeah.
he's really beat up. And the other thing that I think this scene does really well is it shows Kylo's arrogance in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But also it doubles down on this idea that he wants to be Vader.
Yeah.
Because he's fighting with the same fighting style that Luke and Vader use, but really badly.
Yeah.
He's just not as good at it as them. He's still orders of magnitude better than these other two because they've had no training. But both of them have had combat training. So it's not unreasonable that they would be able to keep themselves alive for a little while against a superior opponent who's toying with them.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a massive problem with like the Force stuff at the end because again, like I felt like Kylo was definitely tiring and his wound was taking its toll because like he got shot with Chewie's bowcaster, which was like literally launching stormtroopers across the room earlier in the film when they got shot by it.
Yeah.
And he soaked that up and used that pain to fuel himself for a bit. So badass bad guy, right? I like this. I could see this being people's most hated scene for sure. But I could also see why this might be your favorite fight.
Yeah.
Like particularly if you're, as we say, the target audience for the sequel trilogy, and like you feel a connection to either Rey or Finn.
Yeah.
Like I could see this being your favorite scene.
So the reason why I didn't like the bit at the end where Rey taps into the Force and beats Kylo is that a lot of the stuff that happens with Kylo, it takes away from his scariness as a bad guy. So Vader doesn't lose any fair fight that he's in the first two.
No, that is true.
Wars, right? And he remains terrifying up until the last film, where he becomes humanized, right? And for for Kylo to lose an equal lightsaber fight in the first film that he's in takes away from his scariness as a bad guy. And immediately afterwards, in order to explain why Rey doesn't finish it there, they had the whole like the Earth breaks apart.
Yeah.
And I feel like you could have done that just a little bit earlier. Like even if Rey fought back just a little bit, I'm what ifing so much. I'm really sorry because I said I wouldn't. But if she fought back a little bit, gained a bit of space, but there was like a question mark over who won, and then the Earth breaks apart, then you maintain his coolness just, and like scariness just a little bit more. That's the note that I would give. That's the one note.
I think I could put this at the bottom of A.
Yeah.
Or maybe the top of B.
I'll go bottom of A because I prefer it to the Sidious versus Yoda.
All right.
Scene. I feel like it does a lot.
Yeah. the badly cropped Luke versus Kylo.
Okay, oh man, this separated the entire
This film,
world.
so many people hated this film.
I loved it.
I
I'm
always
gonna
did.
get I'm gonna get into trouble for saying this. I think this is the strongest film in the sequel trilogy. I think it's not perfect, but I think it's the strongest film in the sequel trilogy. Um, I
I
feel
don't think
like,
I
God,
don't think there's a reason that I can disagree with that, because it's definitely better than Rise of Skywalker, and The Force Awakens was like nothing new happened in The Force Awakens.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and this scene is really good.
mm.
Like when I saw this scene in the cinema, I was like, that was really cool.
I think this scene said, you know, the line that Rose has that like gained her the hatred of so many people online, which if you have a problem with a line that an actor says, do not take it out on the actor. Like
Maybe
Star
just
Wars
don't
fans
take it
should
out personally on anyone. Just criticize the
no,
line.
yeah, yeah, you shouldn't take it out personally on anyone. But the fact that she got hate for that line
Yeah,
is just absolutely disgusting to me. Like no one should get hate for a line in a like film. But I think this fight encapsulated what Rian Johnson was trying to say much better than that line actually did. And I think that if you'd have cut that line out,
yeah,
then this would have said everything that you needed to say.
yeah.
Um, is to look for the way out.
Yeah. And
That
and I'm probably gonna get like, I really liked oh my god, the words have just gone out of my brain. Oscar Isaac's character's arc in this film.
mhm. Poe Dameron, yeah,
Poe's arc in this film is absolutely what it needed to be, because he
yeah,
is a dick at the start of this film. Like, he
yeah,
knows he is the best pilot in the fleet. He's that cocky ass that Anakin was, and
yeah,
Anakin never got slapped down for it, and
yeah,
Poe did, and it was good for him.
yeah, and
Um,
and he and I think that demonstrates, doesn't it, how actually if someone is really good at something, they're probably not going to suffer when things go wrong.
yeah,
Like he's the best pilot in the fleet, so he organizes the strike and everyone else dies.
yeah,
Uh, but he's fine.
yeah,
And it takes Leia to go, that was waste, their deaths are on you
yeah,
because you knew that you could come out of that, but they didn't stand a chance.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
This
But
fight, I love that Luke's force projection looks like younger and more athletic than him, because
yeah,
even as a Jedi Master, he's not immune to like idealization. And
yeah,
I really enjoy the way that they've introduced some of these fight scenes in Star Wars media with voids rather than parries,
yeah, go on.
and the way that Luke dodges rather than blocking, which I know is
Yeah,
part of like his force projection thing, but also just like demonstrates again like that massive gulf between him and Kylo. And again, they
yeah,
have the same lightsaber style, and Kylo's really shit at it, and Luke isn't.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's a really strong scene for both of their characters. It shows their characterization. It shows, um, I feel like, um, Luke's character in this film, just in general, is so very much the Luke from the original trilogy, not from the extended universe that a lot of people,
Yes.
got really behind and were very upset when that was made uncanon. Although the question is, was it ever actually canon? I think
I mean, the
people
Skywalker is
who
signed
spent,
off on originally, so yeah, but
yeah, but I think that a lot of people who spent a lot of money on those books probably feel like it should be canon a lot more than those of us who didn't.
yeah,
Um, uh, but the whole like act on impulse, but assess your actions and turn back when you feel like it. So, like what he says to Ray about what do you want me to do? Do you want me to turn up with a laser sword and save the galaxy? That is what he wanted to do when he was
yeah,
in the original trilogy,
yeah,
and he hates it. The reason why he threw the lightsaber away at the beginning of the film is because he that's how he almost tried to solve the Kylo Ren problem.
yeah,
And then he self-evaluated and realized that that was the worst thing that he could possibly have thought. Um, and but unfortunately, he had gone too far, and there was a consequence to that action. And that consequence for him at that point was too much.
mm,
Um, but then for him to realize again at the end that um, he needs to do what is right, no matter what the consequence is, and the consequence at that point being him dying
mm,
was the final part of
yeah.
the arc. Um, yeah,
So I think this is high B tier.
yeah. I'm going to put it above
Yeah,
um, that one because this would be close to like, yeah.
yeah,
I thought it was a really clever one, while also not quite being a lightsaber duel.
yeah.
Because I don't think Luke actually connects
No,
because he's astral projecting. He doesn't actually use his lightsaber really.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay, the last one.
Last one.
The duel between Kylo Ren and Rey on the big part of the Death Star that was on the forest moon of Endor.
Well, it was another moon.
Oh, a different the
Yeah, it was
the
the water moon of Endor rather than the forest.
water moon of Endor. The water and Scottish Islands moon of Endor.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, this is coloured for me, but like in that I was just of all of the Star Wars films that I've watched, this is the one that I was disappointed with when walking out of the cinema.
So I think that this fight is really weirdly placed in the narrative and pacing of this film.
Yeah,
And it's very odd that this fight is the last like lightsaber duel in this series of 9 films because it's a bit of a
yeah,
nothing fight. Like it's got
yeah.
some cool choreography, it's got some cool moments in it, like when he walks through the wave and that sort of thing.
And the
But
catching the lightsabers with force push.
yeah,
It,
like
the the audio on that is awesome.
yes, yeah, sound design is on point. Um, it just it in some ways it represents like one of my major issue with that with Rise of Skywalker
Mm-hmm.
is the pacing of that film was so wacky. Like the
Yeah,
first 20 minutes goes at a million miles an hour,
yeah,
and then you have this weird middle section which kind of culminates with this, and then the last half is very odd and I didn't come out of the film disappointed, because there were moments of like real joy for me at the end of the film, like hearing all the voices of all these Jedi, like that was great. Like, as I say, Ben Solo, like absolutely wasting the Knights of Ren because he's got a lightsaber and he's like tapping into his light side potential. Fantastic, loved it. You know, inner 8-year-old jumping for joy, particularly with the way that he, like the first half of the fight, he's not trying to kill them, and then he kind of takes a breath and centers himself, and then just murders them all because he's so much better than them. Great.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about this duel, which was kind of just a backdrop for the final like segment, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was just stuff that happened to create the moment for Ben Solo to turn.
Yeah.
It didn't tell the story of him turning. It was backdrop for that, which
Yeah.
I think when you compare that to the fight in Return of the Jedi, that whole scene is the story of Vader turning back to the light.
Yeah.
It's not just something that happens as a snap decision because of like the last 30 seconds. So I think this was a huge missed opportunity to both be the capstone duel of the series and to tell that story of Ben Solo's turn much better. I dread to think how much money they had to pay Harrison Ford to come back for that scene, given that he didn't want to come back for any of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was a real missed opportunity.
Did you know what? I can't tell you why he turned back. I can't tell you why. Like, we could talk for a really long time about Vader's arc, but Ren doesn't have an arc. He just kind of ping pongs backwards and forwards. And it kind of feels like almost like one of the main reasons why he came back to the light is because he kind of fancied Rey. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
this is a tricky one because I feel like from a storytelling point of view, it is poor. But from a technical point of view, it's very good. In that there's some great moments. The sound design, the framing. There's some iconic bits of it that just like shots that just stick in the mind. But like you said, like the last film was just a mess from a pacing and story point of view, and it felt like they were trying to get a whole 3 films into one film.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest criticism of the prequel trilogy is that they didn't plan a trilogy. Sorry, the sequel trilogy. Yeah. They didn't plan a trilogy. They just kind of did stuff and then suddenly went, oh, we need to wrap a story up. And I think that my biggest compliment for the prequel trilogy is that they very clearly planned a 3-movie story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sequel trilogy, they like the Force Awakens was unnecessary. Then they did something new in that it just completely could have just been A New Hope again.
Yes.
The they started. Rian Johnson started trying to put in some themes and interesting and some difference into The Last Jedi, and then after the backlash against that, they just backtracked on it all, which then meant that they'd basically made 2 films and they couldn't use anything from either of them because there was nothing new in the first one, and they wanted to backtrack on everything from the second one. So they didn't have the time to do it. And one of the interesting things I think about the original trilogy is that was originally one film.
Yep.
That George Lucas then made into three.
Yep.
And you don't need all of this like clever storytelling and things like that. At its heart, Star Wars is a very simple story that doesn't need all of this extra stuff to make it compelling.
And I think like the thing that I would made me the saddest about the sequel trilogy was though like the four main characters, I guess. I really like all of those characters. I think they're very compelling characters with very interesting stories that you could tell about them. And in a lot of cases, they kind of, backtracked on the interesting part of those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because all four of them, I really enjoy like their characters and their what their character arcs could have been, and
yeah.
But where are we putting this?
I'm not going to put it higher than a C.
Yep.
I feel like kind of like the Grievous one, like there's some interesting stuff there, but it feels like just as a whole, that whole film is a bit of a missed opportunity.
Right. Well, we did it, and we have one important question to answer from the chat before we finish up for tonight.
Okay.
And that is, if you could have a lightsaber, what color would it be?
White.
Yeah, you want the silver ones?
Yeah. I feel like I wouldn't get on with the Jedi Order, and I question stuff too much. Like, are you sure? Is there a better way we could do this? Yeah. It's very kind of Ahsoka in my mind. So yeah, what about you?
I think I'm probably green lightsaber, and that's probably like weighing on like old video game knowledge of like the root. Like several of the old Jedi video games like assigned you a lightsaber color based on your like decisions, and this kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what you mean about
what deep lore.
So
what's the deep lore behind the lightsaber colors?
Well, do you mean the deep lore in terms of movie making, or the deep lore in terms of the like the old canon?
Not talking about the old canon. I'm talking about the new canon. So there's apparently like one color is better for Jedi revenants, or like
so there was a in some of the old games, when you chose like a particular Jedi path, it assigned you a lightsaber color based off that, but then they changed based on the gems you put in them anyway. So I don't know. Okay. I think the reason I choose a green one is because that's Qui-Gon's lightsaber.
Yeah.
And of all of the Jedi in all of the films, I think I'm most I think his opinion on the Force and how the Jedi Order should be is the one that I'm most closely aligned to.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I've only just thought about it now, and probably other people have been saying this for years, is Obi-Wan always wanting to do stuff with Anakin and like, we'll take him together. Let's do this together. And that's probably comes from the Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
And the way that Qui-Gon died when they were separated.
Yeah. Trauma.
Yeah. Summon the Body says, what do you think about the forbidden move where you turn the lightsaber on and off to move through the opponent's lightsaber?
I'm guessing this comes up somewhere in Ahsoka, either that I missed it or that it's in something I haven't seen yet, because I've seen this crop up on the internet recently, and it's not something that I'd ever seen in any of my previous exposure to Star Wars. I do know that in some of the old expanded universe stuff, there were lots of lightsabers which had like variable lengths where people did weird stuff with that. Which, like, if you can build a lightsaber that gives you these advantages and you can use them without hurting yourself, like, why wouldn't you? But you know, Jedi Order has like a strict code, you know.
I think the whenever you have a code or a rule, you got to ask, why is it there, and why would this move be forbidden, right? There in real sword fights, you very often can end with, and if you look at like records of duels and things like that, a double kill is extremely possible. And you got to remember that if you move your lightsaber through your opponent's lightsaber, their lightsaber has moved through yours.
Yep.
You know, yeah. The whole point of sword fighting, it's not put your spiky thing in the other person. It's one, stop the other person putting their spiky thing in you, and then secondly, if possible, put your spiky thing in there. Like the main thing is to stop your opponent's weapon from killing yourself.
Yeah, don't die.
Yeah, so that would be, I would assume, if there is like a rule in the Jedi Order to not do that, I would assume that's probably the reason why. Yeah, because there's only a few Jedi. You don't want them
murdering.
You don't want them all dying in double kills. Yeah. That's a bad ratio to go for. Yeah. All right. Well, we've just blown it all wide open, guys. You can see here the absolute definitive order of tier list of lightsaber duels in the live action
films
trilogy film.
There were no other questions, and I think we are quite close to time, so I think it might be time to tell people that if they liked what we did, let us know, give the video a like, share it, subscribe to Zac's channel. If you didn't like what we did, feed the algorithm by telling us how we're wrong and doing your own tier maker version of this. We'll stick the link. I'll get Zac to stick the link in. Go make your own. Let us know what we did wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I'll put the link to the playlist in the description, so that guys, you can watch through the clips that we watched in making this to create your own as well. Thank you very much, guys. Don't forget, the Patreon is in the description. Thank you for coming along, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of thing. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right.